All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee with Convery, where we caffeinate your curiosity with bold stories and insights and real conversations about building meaningful careers. Today's guest is someone who embodies purpose-driven leadership in higher education and in talent development. Kelly Hart is a strategic higher education leader, a driver of successful outcomes, an advocate for equity and inclusion, and a connector who has spent nearly 2 decades shaping how employers engage talent and how students prepare for meaningful work. From staffing firms to corporate recruitment at Aramark, from managing 400 plus employer partnerships to now overseeing student and employer engagement at Temple's University's centralized career center, Kelly's career has been a masterclass in collaboration, strategic thinking, and creative opportunities at scale. She's an educator, a mentor, a bridge builder, and someone who believes deeply in empowering young people to step into their confidence and into their careers. Kelly, welcome to Coffee with Convery.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Me too. I'm so excited that you're here, and I have so many great things for us to talk about. So maybe we'll start with some rapid fire questions first, and then get into some of the things we wanted to chat about. So, thinking out loud, what is your superpower?
I would say communication. I think it's knowledge is power, and I'm all about communicating within my team, with other departments. Yeah.
Good. Awesome. What was your favorite subject in high school?
Oh, biology. Yeah, science. Big
Biology,
science nerd.
right? Yeah. We learned that about you. We all start somewhere with a job. What was your very first job?
My very first job, I was a greeter at the Hallmark card store at the shopping center near my house.
Amazing. Okay, a greeter. I didn't even know they had greeters for Hallmark back then.
I mean, you did greeting and then you also did like register and other things, but
Oh,
that's where
okay.
you
Yeah.
started was being the greeter. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Build that client facing first, right?
Yes.
Awesome. If you had to describe yourself in one word, what would it be?
Oh, goodness. I would say outgoing. There's never a time where I can't go find someone to network with or talk to. And yeah, I would say I'm a very outgoing person.
Say that too. I would say that too. That's an awesome to be that way. Okay, so let's take us back to where it all started. You've built
Yeah.
an incredible career across staffing, corporate recruitment, employer branding, and now higher education. Um, where your journey began, what pulled you into this world of talent, student success, and relationship-driven work? Just curious.
Um, It's so funny when I was thinking about this. So I was a first gen student, definitely the first person in my family to graduate from college. And while I loved biology, I didn't want to be a doctor or a teacher, which seemed to be the two main avenues. So, like a lot of first gen students or liberal arts students, I ended up in more of a sales role.
Okay.
Um, and, hey, how do I get out here? Um, and ultimately, I ended up working at a staffing firm, a third-party staffing firm, selling our temporary services to employers in the Boston market. And that was definitely, I didn't know when I was in school, like what human resources was.
Yeah.
That was not something that was on my radar. Um, so yeah, I started out in third-party agency and working in that temp space, interviewing, potential workers, selling our services. And then when I relocated back to the Philadelphia area, that's where I went for was other agencies and that space. When I was looking to relocate. So that sort of transition there. But yeah, it was selling and building relationships that really started it.
Awesome. And also like you've moved from agency to corporate talent to campus recruiting, strategy and leadership in higher ed. Uh, what's like the thing that's keeping you motivated and what kind of guided you through those transitions?
So I think I love puzzles. And you could give me a puzzle and I want to solve it. So I'm a very solution focused person. Um, and so I moved into corporate recruiting for a little bit more stability overall. And what I found when I was in corporate recruiting was there was no early talent pipeline in the current state that it was in. And I kept saying, you want me to hire for mid-level managers? Where are my entry-level managers? And they said, well, that's not really a pipeline that we're cultivating a lot, but there's this campus recruiting team that's starting to pick up, and I think that's going to be our answer. And so I went and talked to them and said, what's the plan? What solution are we going to have for these early talent roles? And talking to the person who was leading that department, I was like, wow, this is something I want to be a part of. And a lot of my talent acquisition colleagues were like, "What? Go to universities?" And I said, "No, I think this is exciting." And that made a kind of a really big pivot, especially in the day to day
Yeah.
of what I was experiencing. And I loved it. It was by far one of the most impactful parts of my career to be working with students and really help educating them and helping them understand that transition to work. But then candidly, I had my daughter, and so I needed to stop traveling 8 weeks a
Yeah.
semester. Um, and when I really had to think about it, it was like I loved that piece of working with students. And so when I was going to make this pivot and transition out of, the travel that I was doing, I did strategically look to go into higher ed, to really have more of an impact, before they were getting to that employer, really at the higher ed level.
Absolutely. And you've been at Temple now for a while. You
Yep.
support, I mean, it's a big school, more than 20,000 plus students, 25,000 alumni through development, coaching, programming, and employee connections. What do you think today's students need most from their career centers, and what do you wish they took more advantage of?
I wish they weren't so scared of us. Honestly,
Yeah,
I think
it's kind of
there's a lot
interesting.
of anxiety with today's students, and I think their perception when they think of coming to our office is that they need to know what they want and they need to be, ready and have answers. And we wish they understood that we like to be considered more of a place to explore opportunities.
Yeah.
A variety of options are out there, and I think sometimes they think, oh, I need to have my built resume and really be prepared. And it's like, no, you can come in and say, I don't know. I'm not sure what I need. How can you guys help? And I think that we do actually do a lot of programming and effort, particularly on social media, to introduce our coaches in very natural conversational
Yeah.
ways. We video their offices so you see like they're normal people too, and you can just come in. Um, but I also think one of the key things that they need from us is to really cut through the enormous amount of information that's out there. They have access to so much content. And if they knew that they could come in and say, I really want to work at Independence Blue Cross, how do I contact them? And if they knew I could say, I can put you directly in touch with that recruiter, we can make this happen for you and start you on this journey. That's what I think our biggest value is, to really help those make those direct connections without all of the volume of content that's out there.
Yeah, you're hitting upon a really big challenge is the information that's out there. Information from parents that might be 20 years old, information from friends, information from the online presence of advice givers and people. And it's a lot coming at this generation. Um, and
Yeah.
hard to decipher all that. The other thing I think is interesting is and I never would have thought of that, but like the fear factor to come in and to ask questions like uh and working with you and your teams because um I would be like gun ho to be like, hey, there's someone here to help. But I wonder why they're, maybe it's the human interaction more that they're afraid of stepping in, or the unknown, like you said, or yeah, I wonder what it is there that, you know, because you're putting out the welcome mat, right?
Yeah, I think a lot for the students, what we find is a real fear of being wrong or making mistakes.
Really?
Everything is so closely edited and put out there so great. And um, I think there's this fear of, well, I don't know the answer or I got the answer wrong. And that in some way puts them in a bad position. And that's just not the expectation. But I appreciate from a social media perspective, they feel like, oh, it's not perfect. Um,
Yeah.
we don't say the P word. We don't like
Yeah.
perfect. We just want everyone to do their best.
Do your best.
And so
Strive for
that's
excellence, right?
yes,
Not
yes,
perfection.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, wow, that's really interesting. I have never really thought about it that way.
They're so hard on themselves. They're just really, really, they need to just give themselves a little more grace, in my opinion.
And you and I have made many mistakes in our life and careers and stuff, and that's where you learn, you
Hmm.
know, right?
Yes.
Interesting, interesting. Let's flip a little bit to employer engagement. You've partnered with hundreds of organizations from small businesses to big global brands. What do employers often misunderstand about early career talent, and what should they maybe be doing differently to attract and empower some young professionals?
Yeah, so I think, and I want to speak, I think particularly from the sort of post-pandemic perspective,
Yep.
and it's most happening, I think, this year. We've really tried to stay on task of keeping an eye on the changes. But this year in particular, I do appreciate that the perception is that students want things immediately, very
Yeah.
quickly, instantaneous for everything. But it doesn't mean they want to be a transaction to a potential employer. They want to have more of a personalized interaction and they want to feel like they can see themselves growing there. So I think a lot of employers are so concerned about doing things quickly and making it easy, whether it's to apply, to, express interest, all these different concepts that we're putting out there for students. And I have to say, our students have been saying, we want to interview on campus. We want to see people on campus more. Um, as much as they want to be able to click apply really quickly, they don't want the experience to be a quick transaction. They want to feel like they're choosing something where they feel valued.
Yeah.
And that's something, particularly, I would say, in the last year to 2 years, has been really driving accepted offers. We're really
Really?
seeing students, yeah, they're taking more time. We see fewer offers accepted in the fall and more in the spring now. And students are coming in and saying, I have multiple offers and, what are some things I should be thinking about? What should I be considering? And when it comes down to, oh, I've met people or I've been invited to go and see the workplace, those are really key factors that are driving decisions.
Isn't that interesting? That's really interesting because I also have heard similarly employers maybe not not coming to campus as much or not engaging with campus as much because of all the technology that's available. But from a human student person perspective, they want that interaction
Yes.
or to feel, yeah. Yeah, who doesn't want to feel wanted, valued, and or included, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense. Which leads me to my next piece here. I wanted to ask you about inclusion and student belonging. I know
Mm.
you lead some initiatives like Queer Connect, collaborate with diversity and wellness offices, and you advocate for access and inclusion, which is so important. And thank you for that. Um, how can our employers create environments where all students, including LGBTQ plus and underrepresented groups, really feel seen and supported and able to thrive as who they are?
Love the question. And yes, I think it's so important to be advocating and championing. I love the word you use, environments. I think a lot of organizations have great stuff on their website, or they can tout that they have an ERG. But when it comes to the small day-to-day engagement, it's not really intertwined into their culture. And I think more employers need to focus on the small things that can be so impactful. Like for example, here at Temple, we until about yeah, it was 2020, we still had binary gender identification on our applications. And even though our office is incredibly inclusive, if you're an applicant and that's what you're seeing from our institution as a whole,
Yeah.
that's not a great start to the process. So to know that they would receive that inclusion in the office, but you're not getting it from day one in your application is just a negative impact in general. And so I think those small things, just being mindful of like, what is this perception? Asking people in their interview, what are your pronouns? Do you have any accommodations that you
Yeah.
would need? Calling things out and having folks know that it's safe for them to identify or disclose, I think can be really meaningful. In our office at the Career Center, there is our Office of Diversity, Equity, Advocacy, and Leadership, or IDEAL, runs what's called Safe Zone training. And you go
Hmm.
through and you get training on inclusion, how to follow up, how to report, how to have conversations, and you get a little sticker. And they are on like right above our name tags, right outside our office, so that every student that's
Amazing.
coming in knows you're coming into a safe space.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I think you're right. The signals that go out, how you had dealt with the whole gender thing from your side, like the signals that go out from employers really, especially for someone who's coming from a marginalized group or a situation where they're might be concerning about sharing who they are, what their identity is, what have you. Those signals get picked up pretty quickly, and then they don't feel necessarily. And then, I mean, you and I know this, but then the employers don't necessarily get the full value of that student because they may be holding back, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, very important. I think this is a great lesson for the listeners too, who are students, employers, others that are trying to make these environments, or should be trying to make these environments welcoming and safe. Thank you for jumping into that a little bit too. I think it's so important in today's world where a lot of this stuff is being talked about in sometimes negative contexts. We need to kind of turn that to keep doing what we've been doing well, or maybe take a few lessons out of the book from Kelly and Temple.
I will say, I've done a lot of self-assessment and reflection. I tend to be a very type A personality. I'm all about efficiency. I want to solve that puzzle. But I also realize there are times, particularly in, say, like our staff meeting, I have to pause. And as much as I think like I have this great idea or I know the way we're going to go, sometimes I just have to pause and say, like, are there other ideas about different ways to do this that might be more inclusive?
Yeah.
And it's just something that I've realized, like, when I throw it out there and people know that I'm open to those ideas, really great things happen. And people are more comfortable jumping in and saying, oh, wait, have you thought about this? So when you just put out there that it's welcome, it really changes the vibe where folks just realize that they can share. And the answer might be no. We might not be able to do it. We might not have the money. Shocker.
Right. Right.
But we're at least throwing it out there that, hey, we're open to ideas that are going to drive inclusion and equity. So
100%. And talking about this a little bit longer too, I think there's a lot of great insights being shared by you here. I also, a few years ago, had the opposite where someone was maybe having a struggle or coming into the office with something, and they actually said out loud, like, I'm not my I'm not myself today, so I just want to be able to say that I'm going to listen, I'm going to be engaged, but I'm not going to participate in the conversations as much. And we took that and adopted that as part of our team meetings to say, feel free to do this going forward, because otherwise, what
Nice.
happens is you read the room and you start projecting what's going on. They're not interested in this topic, or what. No, they are interested. They're just not themselves today, right?
Yeah.
Which is
No, that's
another,
great.
yeah, it worked. It was amazing. I've brought that lesson with me everywhere now because of we all, the world's heavy, right? We all have something some
Yes.
days. So we might not
Yes.
have that great idea for that morning because they just want to hear everybody else's, right? But
Yes.
it's
Yes.
all good. It's what makes it though again inclusive, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Amazing. Career coaching and skill building, big part of your who you are, what you do. You oversee career coaches and are an adjunct instructor teaching professional development. What are, in your mind, the three top skills students should be building right now to help to stand out to employers and to be ready to go?
These aren't going to seem earth-shattering, but
That's
I
okay.
do want to let you know I'm pulling not only from my time in the classroom, but also over the summer we do an employer advisory board. And
Ah,
we had our
okay.
employers come in and we talked about that. So the one that they mentioned, particularly for early career talent, is situational awareness and like reading the room. They said students are really struggling with that, like the social cues of maybe I need to listen today and not provide ideas, and maybe I just need to take in and learn. So that's one, and I think being in person, being, in that work environment, the internship experiences are only going to continue to grow those skills. But that was one that I was um, intrigued to hear about from the
Yeah,
employers. Um, with that, also critical thinking. I think students are very quick to identify challenges or problems, but not always so quick to bring up potential solutions.
yeah.
And so being able to say, hey, this isn't working great. Okay, what should we do instead? What are
Right,
options?
right.
Um, that part of it, and to critically think about, well, if you don't like it this way, what are ways it can work and be inclusive for others? So critical thinking, situational awareness, and then another one, and it's what I teach in my class, is just positive mindset. I think students get very, and recent grads get very easily deterred with failure and may struggle sometimes to think of it from the perspective of like, oh, look what I've learned.
Yeah,
And let's come at this from a positive mindset place. Welcoming ideas, welcoming change. It's something we spend quite a bit of time on in my class. And at first, the students are always like, yeah, okay, be positive. And then when we talk about, real life examples and challenges you may run into, and um, even working peer to peer and coming to the table with that positive mindset. And when they see those examples, they start to understand, oh, this isn't just, a little B with be positive. This is really about how you approach your day to day.
yeah. Those are really great, super insightful, very timely too, as our listeners too. And if students are listening to you
Yeah.
right now, these are the things to think about, right? Because it's easy to say what's broken, what's not fixed with that one example, and then okay, then, right? So help us figure out. You're also here for a reason. We want to hear from
Hmm.
you. Help us with this.
Yes.
Otherwise, we would have figured it out, right? Um, no, thanks, Kelly. Those are really awesome. Meaningful partnerships, another big deal. I know you've collaborated across departments from alumni relations to sustainability to housing. What makes, when we think of that relationship, partnership ecosystem, what makes a strong partnership between universities and employers, and how does that directly benefit the students?
So the biggest thing I think is communication and honesty. And that honesty can be very goal centric. So our best employer partners that we work with, we have conversations, every August, every December. I talk to them like, what are your priorities? What are the things you need? Um, how can we make this work better for you, but then at the same time maximize student engagement? Some employers are going to say, I only need these three majors. Okay, great. Let's make a strategy for you around that. Um, I think too many career centers, and I'm, kind of knocking my own people, but we have the fair, we accept all the people registering, and we move on. And that's not what my team does. We really look at, are the students really going to that fair?
Yeah, right.
For you to be getting into a classroom? Is it better for you to be just posting your position on our platform because those students are really engaged on the platform? And so really having an honest conversation about the reality of the students that they're trying to engage and what's going to work, um, I think is really, really important. And then the follow through on both sides. Primarily on the employers being able to be on campus, to say you're going to be on campus, to engage. And then the career centers making every effort that you can to get those students to show up, however many pizzas you have to buy.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yes.
I'm curious maybe to think about this a little bit longer too, but what have you seen changing over the years with um, how students are approaching this interviewing process, building their narratives? How are they coming into the conversation? Because I know employers in their mind think what they're expecting to see, like what who's going to show up and how they're going to show up in those interviews. But any tips or tricks around some of the things you share with your students when they think about that interview process and how they should maybe prepare? Because I know there's people listening, and especially given your position, I know they want to hear from you on that one as well.
I wish that every student was required to do at least two mock interviews before they went to their first interview. It gets the nerves out. It just gets you so much more prepared. Um, the total unknown of I don't know what they're going to ask, at least you have an idea of the types of questions. We use a virtual resource called Big Interview that our students can go online 24/7, 365, and there are some built-in interviews that they can take advantage of. We offer in-person ones in our office. Um, so having some type of practice, I think, is so critical. But then on the flips, as someone who recruited these students myself, recruiters are giving you some grace. Like I think students have to understand
Yeah.
that these recruiters get it, you know? Like I always often say many times a lot of faculty or other people will be like, "Oh my gosh, if you have a typo on your resume, it's over for you."
Yeah.
And I think as a campus recruiter, if I threw away every resume that had a typo on it, I don't think have done a whole lot of interviews.
Yeah.
And so I tend to just be more flexible, give a little bit more grace. And so understanding that it is more about, to your point, telling your story, telling your narrative than this perceived idea of being a cookie cutter perfect applicant. Um, yeah,
I
I
I
hope
love
that's
what you said there because I echo the whole recruiter thing. Like recruiters should not be just like the career services shouldn't be the scary individuals you're dealing with because recruiters are wanting to hire you. They want to make you, especially campus recruiters who really, go that extra mile typically if they're good, and they want to make you get prepared for the hiring manager next, right? Like, so. I think that's such a great lesson there. And to think about it, like, is how can you, of course, go into that interview, somewhat prepared or at least know what you want to talk about, but leverage that opportunity and that relationship to build with the recruiter to get you to the next step,
Yes.
right? Absolutely. Um, Other thoughts or anything I didn't get to that you wanted to share around um, anything around recruiting students, anything around that? I mean, I know you've had a lot of experience, and I don't know if I hit on everything you wanted to share, but before we get to the big takeaway, I was wondering if there's anything that you wanted to highlight or talk about with the listeners who might be listening in today.
Yeah, I would say for any student or early career professional, be an advocate for yourself, ask questions. I think there's this misconception that if you have to ask, you're like already behind the eight ball. Um, but making sure that if you need something, go find a way to get it.
Right.
And whether that means going to the career services office or going to your academic advisor, um, the things that you're doing to be able to get through to commencement and graduate, that's a similar way to look at like, okay, if I want to get to these goals and you know find what I'm looking for, I have to be proactive. It's not just going to get delivered to you at your door. Um, yeah, that's one thing I think a lot of students feel like, well, if it's here, it'll come to me. But sometimes you need to take that step and be proactive and take advantage of the resources that are out there.
I think that's such a valuable life lesson because if you do manage your own career, so to speak, it's something you'll do the rest of your life, right? It's you're teaching and you're sharing a thought here that's so um, insightful because once you've done that and not sit and wait for it to come, that's how you want to really go after, like, look at the career you've had, right? I mean, it wasn't because you sat there and waited, right? You took initiative.
Yeah, I'll be very honest. So I was able to get my master's and was eligible to be teaching, and it was during the pandemic, and I realized how much I was missing the student interaction. And so I went to my boss and I said, I know it's not in my job description, but if an opportunity arises where I'm given the chance to get in the classroom, I need you to know that I'd really be interested in doing that, even if it impacts my day to day. And she was absolutely on board. And about 5 months later, I got a call and they said, we want you to teach this senior seminar. And I didn't even have to worry, like, oh, is she going to be okay with this? Because I already talked to her and I already said, this is something I'm really interested in doing. And so when it came time to have that, what could have been a really challenging conversation, it was like, okay, this is going to happen now. And she was like, I'm so happy for you. I'm so excited. And I was so glad that I just expressed something I knew I was going to want to be able to do. And then I was lucky enough for that to come to fruition. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's
great
definitely,
example. Great example. Like, put yourself out there.
yeah.
Take a chance, take a risk, right? Well, Kelly, this has been amazing catching up with you today, and thank you for
Yes.
sharing your journey, your insights, and your passion for shaping student success and employer engagement. Your work is creating pathways, breaking barriers, and definitely redefining what it means to enable the next generation of talent. And I'm so happy to have you on the Coffee with Convery podcast and for you to be a part of today. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. I'm always up for talking about this. I'm super passionate about the work that we do, and feel really, really lucky to be a part of my team at Temple. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, maybe there'll be a part two one day.
I love it.
All right. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, you can catch more episodes and stories at coffeewithconvery.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram where we share behind the scenes content and some updates. Until next time, remember, success isn't always about climbing the corporate ladder. Sometimes it's about building your own jungle gym.